sulfide, H2S, on built capital here in Reykjavik, and Maria was working on a study that was looking at those costs. So this big jump here is when the newest Reykjavik power plant comes on to the east of the city, and we start seeing elevated levels of hydrogen sulfide in the city, and that's roof replacement costs, paint replacement, et cetera, which is accelerated. A little dip down there in 2008 as vehicle kilometers traveled decreased, perhaps due to the recession. So some ways that this could be improved would be to get a better breakdown of which types of vehicles are on the road. We had a very coarse estimate of how many were diesel and how many were gasoline, as well as a very coarse estimate of how many were urban and how many were in more rural areas. But better data on that would lead to a more accurate indicator. Would also be possible to do this in some other ways, looking at total fuel consumed, or just by measuring ambient air quality, although the number of measuring stations in Iceland at the moment is relatively low. Oop, wrong direction. The long-term damage from greenhouse gas emissions was another category that we looked at. One of the big challenges in this category is getting an accurate number of what the cost of greenhouse gas emissions are. This involves also some cultural assumptions. What you want to set as the discount rate will make how much you value future damage makes a big difference on what this is. So this is part of a societal discussion about how this should be valued. The way we calculated it was we used some estimates of the marginal social cost of carbon, which looks at the damage done by greenhouse gas emissions over the gas's entire lifetime. And we brought that all into the current year, so that anything that is emitted in this year and all the damage that it does in the future counts in this year. This works pretty well in terms of showing the trend for sustainability. If you cut your greenhouse gases next year, the indicator improves and your sustainability is shown as better. It's less good as a measure of instantaneous welfare because the emissions that you had last year are still in the atmosphere this year and causing damage. So there's fairly extensive debate in the literature about which is the best way to count that. For this year, we just counted the damages in the year that the gas was emitted, so we figured this is a better measure of sustainability and shows the entire damage caused by the gas when it's emitted. It internalizes the externality as tightly as possible. So a couple of things, again, to think about on this indicator going forward is which of those valuation methods is most appropriate. And another project would be to work on improving the historical data. Starting in 1990, Iceland reported all its emissions to the UNFCCC. I think there are 3 C's there. But before that, it's just a linear regression. We know there were some interesting things going on there. Monica mentioned the change in wetlands, and that results in greenhouse gas emissions. There was also the switch from oil to geothermal, and those trends are moving in different directions, which is why we left it with a linear trend, but some good background research could get you a more detailed estimate in the past there. Next group is leisure time, etc.
My name's Erin. I worked with Brindis on leisure time, underemployment, and cost of commuting. And basically, John talked a little bit about leisure time, but leisure time is the time that you're not spending at work and you're not spending sleeping or doing other daily maintenance activities such as eating or brushing your teeth or all those various things. Underemployment is a little different from unemployment in that it's people that are maybe discouraged from looking for jobs because they've been looking for so long, or people that are not working to their full capacity, or people that are maybe working part-time that would rather be working full-time. And commuting is, as many of you know, driving to and from work. So we looked specifically, I'm going to talk more about leisure time, and one of the reasons why leisure time is important and taken into GPI is because in GDP, the increase in economic growth usually reflects a decrease in the amount of leisure time that people have. And GDP doesn't count that as a negative feature, and GPI says, okay, we want people to have leisure time, we want people to have time with their families, time to exercise, time to relax, and so we're going to count the time that they spend working extra and not getting that leisure as a negative cost. So this is still a work in progress, but basically what you can see is that we had a lot more of a lot more of leisure time kind of going forward. So when we looked back at the data, we found data that said that back in the 60s, people were working 50 to 60-hour weeks. And then we found data saying when the Parliament decided what amount of vacation time and the length of the work week. And so the length of the work week and the amount of vacation time has steadily, well, the length of the work week has been decreasing and the amount of vacation time has been increasing. So people are getting more leisure. And this is a countrywide view, not per capita, so you can kind of see that it's leveled off. But the reason why it's leveling off is even though leisure time is slowly going down, you know, tick by tick, the population is also increasing. So that's kind of why it looks level there. But if you looked at it on a per capita basis, you would see that the amount of leisure time is increasing steadily. So let's see. The way that we did this is basically we assume that everyone has 10 hours of discretionary time a day, and that number we just got from all the other studies. So 10 hours of discretionary time a day is 3,650 hours a year. And then we take the average working week and put that into an annual figure and subtract that from the discretionary time, which gives us our total leisure time. And then we give that a value. So we worked on a big spreadsheet to come up with the average annual, or the average hourly wage rate. And we still have a little bit of work to do on that to kind of make it adjust for inflation and so that it reflects what's been going on in Iceland. But so as you can see, we're getting more leisure time, and the GPI is leveling out here.
And so we're the last group on that. I worked with Chris and August, and we did two topics: the lifespan of consumer durables and public infrastructure, which includes the services of consumer durables, the services of highways and streets, and the cost of consumer durables. And Chris is going to present on the dependence on foreign assets, which includes net capital investment and net foreign borrowing. And so the way it works with the cost and services of consumer durables is the blue line is the services that households receive from consumer durables, and the red line is the amount that they have to pay, that they paid for consumer durables in each year. And so when you're looking at the red line, the actual amount that they paid is distributed over the next 6 2/3 years. So that's why you'll see when there's an increase in expenditures on household product, on consumer durables, then the services will go up for the next 6 years. And likewise, you'll see in 2009, even though they stopped spending so much on consumer durables, the services continue to increase. And so our methodology was to take, we assumed a 15% depreciation rate. There were some numbers on the depreciation rate of automobiles in Iceland from the Iceland Automobile Association, which is FIB. And so they assumed a 13 to 16% depreciation rate, so we figured 15 would work for this. And we had to find the average interest rate, which was 9.5%. And so we added those together, which is 24.5%. And we took that amount of the household expenditures on consumer durables in each of the years for the net stock. So if you bought something in 1990, that stock is still around in 1996, and then you would deplete that stock. And so one recommendation we would have for the future is to, like the Swedish study, they actually were able to get the depreciation rate for each of the types of consumer durables, but we had to assume 15% rate for all of them. And consumer durables can include cars, furniture, household appliances. And so some sort of consumer survey would be really helpful to understand how long these other appliances and consumer durables are lasting.
Cool. So